Hi folks, welcome to the webinar. Let's get going. So, welcome to the webinar. This webinar is about designing, deploying and governing Snowflake database with ER Studio and Aqua Data Studio. Your presenters today are myself, Jamie Knowles from the ER Studio team, and we've also got Darren Fulmer from the Aqua Data Studio team. There will be a recording of this session sent out after the webinar. If you've got any questions, there's a little questions panel in the webinar console. Just add your questions there and we'll try and get to them towards the end. Okay, let's get going. So let's first of all introduce the two tools that we're going to be talking about today. So the first one is ER Studio. So the main role that uses ER Studio is the data architect. Data architects are going to use ER Studio to document and design data assets. Those data assets might be files or databases, and the key thing is every time we design a data asset, we're going to be using common patterns. I'm going to talk you through what that means in a moment. And the key feature of ER Studio is it connects in with your data governance tools. So we end up with the data ecosystem. Aqua Data Studio really is a Swiss Army knife for data professionals, and the two roles that we're going to talk about mainly today is really the database administrator and the data analyst. The DBA, database administrator, uses the tool to review, modify and optimize code. So it's a great tool for being able to work with SQL code and really understand the meaning of schemas and then deploy them directly to the database. Data analysts also going to be working with SQL code, but they're going to be manipulating code that helps them understand and visualize the data on data assets. Okay, so we're going to take you through a story with Snowflake. So the sort of story is around analytics. Most of you will be using Snowflake to support some sort of data warehouse or data lakehouse. So we're going to talk you through how the different roles are going to be orchestrated and to sort of deliver an end-to-end process. So the process is as follows. We've got four different roles we're going to talk about. Data stewards are going to be looking at the governance side of things. Data architects, as I said, designing the warehouse. The DBAs then deploying the code, and the analysts doing obviously the analysis. So starting at the top then, data stewards. So the two things that they're going to get involved with. One is defining the governance of the analytics program, and the other one is understanding all of the possible data sources that will be feeding the data warehouse. And ER Studio will work closely with your data catalog. So there's integrations with products like Calibra, Microsoft Purview. We're just about to deliver our integration with Elation and then Informatica. So the tool will help you understand the governance domains of the organization. Use the term domains. So data as a product is a really popular approach to analytics programs nowadays. So this is really important, understanding what are those domains of subject matter experts. And then for each of those domains, we can build the governance framework, which is the business glossary. So what are the terms, the pieces of information that we're interested in, and set the policies and rules for them. ER Studio can help with that process and support the data catalog. Likewise with cataloging sources, we want to go through all of the possible data sources and try and understand them and build a catalog of those sources connected against the business glossary so we can understand where is possible data that we might want in the data warehouse. Then we get on to the process of designing the warehouse itself. So there's three phases here. So the initial contracts for the outputs of the warehouse, then we'll do the design work, and then we'll make it ready for consumption. So the sort of process is we start off with gathering the requirements. That might happen in the data catalog. Again, we might be using a data as a product approach to this, understanding what data products are required, what are the business level requirements for each product. We'll then go through a process of creating logical data models. So this is very much like when you're designing a house. You'll start off with those sort of very high-level businessy requirements. Then we'll harden them into some sort of picture, a design at a business level which we can then approve before we then start building anything real. So once we've got the requirements and the logical models for the warehouse set up, we can then start designing the warehouse structures, so the different layers of the warehouse. So we might have staging areas and the central data store and the star schemas. We can design all those with ER Studio. We can then understand the source data assets and start documenting some of the pipelines, the mappings between the source assets and the structures in the warehouse. We can then generate the DDL codes for those warehouse structures. So in our Snowflake database, we can generate the DDL code that creates the tables and the different layers of the warehouse. And then we want to make everything available to the organization. So we want to publish these to our data catalog. And again, that's where ER Studio connects in with your data cataloging tool, data governance tool. Once we've created the code, then the database administrators will come in and then review that code. So this is the deployment phase. So the database administrator with Aqua Data Studio will review what ER Studio's provided, the data architects produced, and make changes to that code according to their own policies. And then they can use Data Studio to then deploy that code directly to the database. The next layer, the data analysts. So again, the warehouse has now been created. We've got tables of data, star schemas, all now loaded with data. The data analysts can start to create queries. So Data Studio will help them understand what tables exist in the data warehouse and allow them to create queries. And they can then execute those queries in Aqua Data Studio and then render the data in different ways and do analyses on that data. So that's the sort of general overarching process that we want to be able to support with the tools for these different roles. So let's go into a bit of detail around the design process in ER Studio. So again, as I said, we start off with some requirements. Those requirements are pretty unstructured. With ER Studio, we can create the logical data model. So this is a business-friendly asset, a sort of blueprint in business language for the information that is required for that asset. So we create these things called entities, and we draw lines between them. We can create attributes of each of the entities. We can state how do we identify an instance of one of these entities. So it's all about the information itself. So the stakeholder and the data architect might go through sort of various iterations and changes to the logical model before they then approve this is what we want. So the idea here is before we start cutting code and building anything in Snowflake, we want to get the requirements right, make sure we totally understand the requirements so that we can deliver those requirements faithfully and deliver good quality. So the logical model is that contract for the data asset. ER Studio then can transform that logical model into a physical model, and we support many different platforms as well as Snowflake. So we can do the same thing for the data sources as well as the Snowflake warehouse itself. So the physical model is very much aligned with the technology of the platform, in this case Snowflake, and we can apply naming standards as we go along. So generally what we'll do, we'll create from the logical model the first cut physical model. We'll then go and add in specific features for the platform, which we can talk about later on, and then get the physical model just right. And then at that point, we have another approval gate, and when we're ready, we can then generate the code. And then subsequent change cycles, new requirements come in. We can modify the logical model and go through iterations again of changes, and then as an approval gate for the changes. We then compare the logical model with the physical model, propagate the changes across. The tool helps you with all of this. So we've updated the physical model, and then we get the physical model right. And then ER Studio allow you to compare the physical model with the live database, see what the differences between them are, and then propagate and generate an alter script. So the database is live, the data is full of data. So we'll create specific Snowflake alter scripts to be able to change that data in a safe way. So that's the sort of output side of ER Studio. And again, every time we generate code, the Data Studio will be then taking that code and taking the next steps. So that's our basic design process. Documentation is really just sort of the opposite. We can reverse engineer from Snowflake or any other data assets, creating physical models. The tool will then have some little tools to help create a nice logical model, which then documents that particular data asset. Now, the key thing with ER Studio is we don't want to design every asset in isolation. So every source data system, we don't want to design those in isolation. The different layers of the warehouse, likewise. We kind of want to incorporate the notion of standardization. So every time we create a logical model in ER Studio, you can pull from a common palette of reusable definitions. Some organizations might create a single enterprise logical data model in sort of data mesh or data products. type environments, you might have different domain models, each domain modeling the information that they're responsible for. We can pull entities from any of those models into our design, which allows us to sort of standardize. So we've got better interoperability. We can improve the quality of our assets within Snowflake. And we use the enterprise data model to do this. And this is really useful, especially in sort of data product type projects. So the orange or gold lines here represent the sort of borders of each domain. So we can create a nice sort of high level conceptual model, and then we can elaborate on that for each domain and try to understand the details at a business level of all of these concepts. So we've got one single notion of customer. What are the different types of a customer? How do we identify a customer? Standard attributes like credit rating score here. What's the calculation for that? So this is all a model of the information at a business level. And again, we're going to use this to drive all of our designs. So looking at that in ER Studio, so this is ER Studio Data Architects. This is the desktop tool that the data architects will be using all day long. So this is an example of an enterprise data model. So down on the left-hand side, we can see the different domains or subject areas of the organization. We've got human resources, product management, sales. So this is a model of the sales domain. And we can see that this is all the information that sales cares about, is interested in, orders and products, and then the employee that sold an order, for instance, and the customers. And we can see that some of the information is owned by the domain sales, and other information that sales cares about is owned by other domains. So a really useful model, especially again in a data product type approach. So in order to understand the source assets that's going to feed our Snowflake database, having a data catalog is really useful. And ER Studio can help you build out this data catalog. So again, the enterprise data model is a really important and useful part of this. So from that standard model, we can do really nice things like create a business glossary, harvest a business glossary from it, and seed your data governance or data catalog tool from it. We can help you map those business terms to the designs of all of those data assets that we've been creating and create that data catalog. So now, as we're trying to find data to feed our data warehouse, we've got a beautiful map of it. So if our Snowflake warehouse requires a star schema with customer data, then great. Where is the customer data at source? And this gives us a map of all of those data assets. So synchronizing with the data governance tool is a really important part of ER Studio. So what you've got on the left-hand side here is the view of a business term in the team server part of ER Studio. So we've got the data architect component that your data architects will be using all day long. And then we've got a web part of the tool so that all of the extended stakeholders can browse the models and view all the sort of wonderful information. So this is a business term. So we're showing a term party. And right in the middle of the screen, there's a sort of taxonomy of party. So this is a graphical view that Team Server will provide. So we can understand the taxonomy of party and drill down into individual terms. So this is representing our business glossary. And we can synchronize this with both Microsoft Purview and Calibra. So over on the right, we can see exactly the same term in those different tools. ER Studio can synchronize with those other tools, making either Team Server or Purview or Calibra the master. And then the next question is, where is the data? So again, as we're trying to source data, so here we're going from a particular business term, and ER Studio in Team Server is showing us all the different models of these different data assets that contains employee data. So employee in the middle of the screen, I can see that it exists within a HR database, and there's three physical models, three parts of the HR database and one single logical model. Okay. So really good way of asking and answering that question, where is my data? So now we can get on to designing the data warehouse itself, and we can support many different schema systems for your warehouse. So in this case, we've got a medallion architecture. So the different layers of the warehouse, we've got the bronze or the staging layer, we've got the silver layer in the center, and we've got the star schemas. And as you can see, semantically, all these layers should be pretty much identical. So we can reuse the enterprise logical model in exactly the same way, create the logical model, and then for each layer, we can then transform that into a different schema system. So over on the right, the star schemas. We're going to start from the same logical entities, okay, that's going to satisfy our requirements. And then ER Studio has got various tools that helps you refactor those entities into physical fact tables and dimensions. The silver layer of the warehouse will have a structure very similar to that logical model. And again, using the enterprise business-driven logical model means that our data warehouse is going to be likewise business-driven. Every entity, every table in that silver layer is going to support that standard definition, the standard business keys, the standard attributes are all well described, well documented, and mapped back to our business glossary. So we've got a nicely documented warehouse as we go along, which means we can then govern things. So I should be able to go to any table in the warehouse, any column, and I can get back to the business term against which all the policies and the rules set by the data steward is available. So I can then make sure that the security requirements in the warehouse are being applied appropriately. So my logical models allowed me to design the silver layer. Then we get to looking for the source assets. So again, our data catalog has helped us identify what are the source assets. We can then use ER Studio to design staging tables in the bronze layer of the warehouse, again using the logical model or just making copies of the tables from the physical model. But everything's nicely documented as we go through. ER Studio will also allow you to create source target mappings between the different layers, which then can be output as a document and given to your data engineers to create ETL and ELT jobs. So again, back to data architects, the physical model here. So we can see a star schema. We've got a fact table in the center and then the dimensions. So the physical model is aligned with your data platform. So as we craft each of the tables and columns, the tool will allow you to set the data types of all of the attributes. We can include sort of things like primary key information and identity columns and a lot of the specific features of the platform. We can add in things like clustering keys and other Snowflake specific features. We talked about the medallion architecture. ER Studio also has tools that help you build data vault schemas. So we've got a really nice sort of set of wizards that are included with the tool. And again, the wizards will help you have a very business-centric data warehouse, a business-centric data vault. So the core structure of the data vault, the hubs and the links, will be inspired from that enterprise logical model, business-driven. So we've got a nice clean set of hubs for each of those business entities. The wizards will then allow you to sort of go through your source data assets and create satellites for each of them, and gives you a sort of a drop-down palette of the hubs, so that you're not creating a source system driven data vault, it's business driven. So we're going to make sure we've only got one and only one hub for each particular business concept and all the satellites attached to that. So the tool will help you through that process. And as I mentioned, documenting the data movement. So here we can see on the left-hand side, we've got, in this particular data movement, our silver layer tables, and on the right, we've got our gold layer tables. So we can create these little transformations at either a high level, showing the sort of table movements, or we can even go down to a column level and show sort of the logic of each transformation. But it allows you to sort of create these graphical views of the transformations and then generates out documentation for your engineers. So we've designed all of these tables in ER Studio. We've created these physical models and we've taken all of our Snowflake specific features. So the next thing we can do is generate code. So this is the kind of the final step of the data architect. We've got two options here, because if the data architect is also taking the role of the DBA, when you generate your DDL codes, there's a little checkbox that says, open that code immediately in Aqua Data Studio and allow me to continue the journey. Other customers might have different people taking the role of the DBA, and they might be part of a DevOps process. So ER Studio will allow you to export the code and publish it, commit it to a Git repository. Okay. And then, of course, then the next role, the DBA, will then pull that code from that Git repository. Cool. So that's the last slide I was going to talk through on ER Studio. So I'm now going to hand over to Darren, who's going to talk through Aqua Data Studio.
All right, thank you, Jamie. Go ahead and become presenter and share my screen. All right, thank you, Jamie, for that on ER Studio. So we saw how ER Studio can walk you through building out your model. And then what do you do with that model? You know, you can go directly into Aqua Data Studio, or I mean, not Aqua Data Studio, but Snowflake, and you can start working with that model directly. But, you know, we need to understand why Snowflake needs more than just Snowflake. And with regards to leveraging Aqua Data Studio now, you know, Snowflake excels at its intended functions. So, you know, it efficiently manages compute, storage, and query execution in, you know, its cloud native manner. You know, however, this specialization imposes limitations. It's neither a development environment nor a BI platform. And transformations, governance, and upstream validations are not within its capabilities. And this isn't a defect in Snowflake. It's actually the way they designed Snowflake so that it can remain fast and scalable. And that's why teams working at scale need complementary tools like Aqua Data Studio. So why use Aqua Data Studio with Snowflake? So when you're using Snowflake regularly, there's two essential needs quickly arise. First is Snowflake's native interface is too limited for advanced developers. There's no script management. There's no results comparison. There's no integrated visualizations. Secondly, it doesn't support some of those essential tasks like upstream data validation or synthetic test generation, Git integration. As we saw with ER Studio, you can load your model into your Git repository, or in even schema lifecycle management in Snowflake. So, but Aqua Data Studio addresses all of these needs. And this is where Aqua Data Studio can really enhance the capabilities in your Snowflake environment. So from design to execution and testing, we've witnessed how ER Studio establishes structure, integrates that governance, and designs a clear model for your Snowflake environment. However, merely having a model isn't sufficient enough because it doesn't execute queries, it doesn't validate outcomes, or ensure environments remain synchronized. And this is where Aqua Data Studio comes in. It's the essential tool for transitioning from design to execution, turning models into working systems. So it's even better. It supports synthetic data generation, allows you to test against your Snowflake environment, and it allows you to go ahead and have production-like data sets through synthetic testing without exposing sensitive information. And this means you can simulate scenarios, uncover performance issues, and validate your design that you built in ER Studio, all while staying compliant with any governances that your company has instituted. So we have a unified lifecycle with ER Studio and Aqua Data Studio. So think of ER Studio as your blueprint and Aqua Data Studio as the builder, inspector, and operator. So ER Studio handles the logical physical modeling, the naming standards, the constraints, the governance policies. Aqua Data Studio handles implementation of those queries, the validation, automation, and analysis of your data. And this partnership supports a governed and agile Snowflake environment from end to end. So you see that life cycle from design to deploy to query to optimize and maintaining that governance. So both tools are very strong cross-platform tools. So they cover beyond Snowflake. ER Studio caters to a number of different database platforms and really helps to support hybrid or multi-cloud environments. And Aqua Data Studio even accommodates more data sources. It supports 40 different platforms currently, along with Snowflake. And it can also handle direct CSV files. It can handle raw JSON files, work with your on-prem systems, or even your cloud systems. And it makes it an essential tool for any kind of enterprise scale operations, both ER Studio and Aqua Data Studio. So let's go ahead and start looking at how Aqua Data Studio can really help you with your SQL within your Snowflake environment. And Aqua Data Studio is where your work is going to get done. So Aqua Data Studio becomes your operational command center. So it brings your Snowflake design to life that was built into ER Studio. And whether you're building new structures, maybe debugging some pipelines, or running analytics, Aqua Data Studio is the tool for you. So it connects the model that was created in ER Studio to reality. And it enables you to do rapid schema prototyping, debugging, analytics, all in a single place. And Aqua Data Studio goes far beyond the basic Snowflake capabilities. Again, it gives you tabbed SQL editors. It gives you parallel query execution. It gives you reusable code snippets. You have an interactive object browser, all the things that you would expect to find in a fully featured IDE. And this tool helps you to replace some of the limited query console capability. You know, especially if you're a seasoned developer with a lot of experience, you need a stronger IDE for your capabilities and your workload day to day. And this Aqua Data Studio, this allows you to make those connections from ER Studio models directly into your real world execution in Snowflake, and really helps to boost the productivity by minimizing tool switching. In many people out there in hybrid environments, they spend a lot of time jumping from one tool to another to handle a lot of their day-to-day work. And Aqua Data Studio eliminates that tool switching and allows you to stay in a single tool and focus on your work. So validating and optimizing that deployed design. So while Aqua Data Studio does not currently support visual execution plans in Snowflake, it does offer other powerful tools for help improving and understanding your query logic. So there is a built-in query builder tool, and this allows users to visually design and refine complex SQL with joins, filters, aggregations, without having to actually write all that code from scratch. And this is a view of what that looks like in Aqua Data Studio. And then for those that are in need of creating SQL much more quickly, Aqua Data Studio has an AI assistant that helps to generate working queries from natural language descriptions. And this makes it much easier to explore your data, validate the logic, or to build prototypes for transformations. And these tools significantly enhance productivity, particularly when you're repeating queries on live data or building exploratory queries. Together with the query builder or the AI assist, these features help reduce the overall trial and error cycles that you may typically experience in Snowflake's basic editor. And it helps your team to optimize their code much more quickly, even without that explain plan feature. So Aqua Data Studio also allows you to validate your data, with analytics and visualizations directly within the tool. So beyond simple results tables, Aqua Data Studio supports side-by-side result comparisons and allows you to do immediate data output charting through the visual analytics component of the tool. And this is all without the need to export or write any new queries. So you can prototype your queries, run them in production. Data Studio helps to ensure that the correct data reaches the right place in your organization. So data analysts can explore these results immediately in charted format to confirm that business needs are met. So, and you don't have to have separate tools to do all this. All of this is capable within Aqua Data Studio. Now, another thing that you're going to want to do after you've built out your models or you've made some alterations or changes in your models is you want to maintain schema consistency across your environments. So between your development environment, your test environment, your production environment, UAT environment, if that's a layer in your organization. And Aqua Data Studio allows you to do that utilizing the schema comparison tool. And the schema comparison ensures your environments reflect the original model and any governance intent. So you can also execute DDL scripts across these environments with integrated logging and rollback support. And this is ideal for that version deployments, and it helps to reduce risk when promoting changes. So changes can be version controlled and audited through Git, or there's several other software programs that Aqua Data Studio supports for your versioning control. But Git is the most popular one that's supported currently. And these changes in the version control can be audited, which is extremely vital for compliance-heavy workflows. The schema compare tool allows you to look at differences between those different environments, to resync them if that's what is needed through the development, testing, and production environments. You can track that model drift and easily make corrections utilizing Aqua Data Studio. And this is all to help you to enforce your governance across your organization. There's also the capabilities in Aqua Data Studio to have automated governance within that source control and scripting. So as we saw, ER Studio allows you to load your DDL into your Git repository. And you can utilize Aqua Data Studio to also manage that Git repository and track any changes that are occurring to ensure DevOps practices are being adhered to in your data environment. So each script and schema modification can be easily tracked through the version control. It can be automated as well through a scripting process within Aqua Data Studio. And this automation can help you to regulate and ensure that those collaborations are being adhered to within your organization. And additionally, since every script and query can be versioned using Git, Aqua introduces a level of discipline and traceability that Snowflake native editors lack. And this helps to facilitate compliance and collaboration among your teams. So you can utilize Aqua Data Studio to align with those modern DevOps practices your organization may have. So you can follow a process of committing, validating, and pushing out to the schema and track it all through the version control system. So Aqua Data Studio is more than just a Snowflake client. It bridges the gap between legacy systems and emerging systems. You can clean your data in Aqua Data Studio. You can do testing of designs safely, utilizing synthetic data to check performance benchmarking in your queries. And you can even write SQL queries with your AI assist to help convert natural language questions into extremely complex SQL. You can also utilize that to help you to optimize existing code that may be bottlenecking your resources. So Aqua Data Studio essentially is the glue layer for that diverse environment that you may have. It's a single IDE for all of your database platforms, not just Snowflake, allowing you to bridge gaps between data analysts, developers, DBAs, the business analysts, utilizing BI features within the tool itself. So it does so much more than Snowflake's native IDE tool and can really help productivity. Jamie, I'll go ahead and turn the presentation back over to you.
Yeah, it just shows the next slide where you can present. Okay, I'll talk through the next slide.
All right.
You need me to show the slide, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I need you to, yeah.
Just bear with me, folks. There'll be a brief technical interlude while Jamie sorts out his buttons.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I made you presenter, Jamie.
Thank you very much. Okay. Hopefully you can see my summary slide here.
Yes, sir.
All right. So ER Studio and Aquafold's Data Studio work together. It's going to give you an end-to-end process. So all the way from the initial requirements to sourcing data assets through to deployment of the code and then the analysis phase. So everything you need. The design process, this is really important. We really want quality from our analytics program. So we can take those requirements, ensure that we're delivering against those requirements. The warehouse itself is going to be well structured, well architected with harmonized data assets. Okay, so this is going to make the warehouse in general scalable. So without good design, without good architecture, without these sort of reusable components, we're going to end up with something that's very difficult to scale and over time will become unmanageable and just end up like many warehouses into a swamp. So having this design process really does help with overarching quality throughout. And those common models are really important for consistency and absolutely vital if you're looking at a data as a product. It integrates with your data governance program and your data governance tools. So throughout the whole thing is going to be well documented. We can go from any field in our Snowflake warehouse back to the business glossary and understand the policies and rules that apply, and which means that we can audit our warehouse and make sure that we are compliant with our data governance policies. The tool set allows you to run multiple queries. So this is really a feature around Data Studio. So the Snowflake UI just doesn't really cut the mustard with this. So ADS really improves your querying approach. And the AI tools within Aqua Data Studio really sort of cut the time taken to write complex queries. It really helps you with understanding Snowflake code, so that the tool is going to do a lot of the work for you, make it easier and quicker to use. And then
you can utilize that natural language question and allow it to do all the heavy lifting.
Great. Thanks, Darren.
Yeah.
And then, of course, both tools sit within your DevOps process. So EL Studio pushing to Git, ADS pulling from Git. So we've got that sort of overarching process there. Great. Okay, so let's go to questions now. So we can answer some of your questions, and what we're also going to do is ask you some questions as well. So I'm going to launch a poll here. So as we're talking, please feel free to give us your answers in here. Over to questions then. So the first one is, could Aqua Data Studio replace the Snowflake web UI completely? So I guess this is one for you, Darren.
Yep. Yeah. So yes. So for most development, testing, and analyst tasks, Aqua Data Studio provides full feature SQL IDE capabilities, like script management, version control, results comparison, visualizations. All these features go far beyond what you get in the Snowflake basic console. There are probably some administrative tasks like managing warehouses or roles that may still require you to have that native Snowflake UI, but probably about 99% of what you get out of the Snowflake UI, you're going to get a much better tool with Aqua Data Studio.
Very good. Thanks, Darren. So back to our poll then. So the question was, when working with Snowflake, what's your primary focus? And I was trying to understand sort of whether you're sort of more focused around the design part of the warehouse or the sort of final sort of DBA side of things. And 71% of you said both are equally important. So that's good. And we've got a mix of people on the call. Some of you are saying you're still exploring where you want to focus things. So thanks for that. So I'm going to close that poll down now, and we'll do the next one, which is, how do you currently approach data asset design and schema management in Snowflake? Okay, and while you guys are answering that, I'm going to go on to the next question. So next one, the answer is yes. We're just about to release in the next couple of weeks an AI model builder. So we're trying to make the tool quicker, easier to use, more friendly to business people. So we're seeing a lot more of the business domain teams get involved in the modeling and design process. So we're just about to release a little AI assistant where you literally just sort of give it your design document, a bunch of text, hit a button, and we use a ChatGPT-4 engine behind the scenes back on our servers that then produces a logical data model from it. So yeah, so sort of productivity aid for experienced users, and really sort of helps new users get to grips with the tool and kind of learn the science of data modeling. Okay, so back to our poll then. So the question was, how do you currently approach data asset design and schema management in Snowflake? So we asked sort of, do you start conceptual or logical data models? 18% of you said yes, you do that. I directly build and manage physical schemas. So this one is it's good to see only 12% of you have ticked that one, checked that one. So this is always a concern. How much architecture do I do? How much design do I do? So going through those gears of sort of logical models, conceptual models, enables you to get the designs right before you cut any code. Having those common models really allows you to sort of have consistency across the different layers all the way back to the sources. So there's a lot of benefits to sort of using business-friendly conceptual and logical models first. A lot of you are saying using both modeling and direct schema. So that's interesting too. Okay. Let's go on to the next question, the last question. Which part of the Snowflake lifecycle do you spend the most time on? Okay. And while you're answering that, we've got another question from you guys. How does Aqua Data Studio help enforce governance and consistency across environments? One for you, Darren.
Right. Yeah. So Aqua Data Studio offers the ability to do schema compare and synchronization. And those tools can help you see where there might be drift in your different environments. And you can load those comparisons into your Git to track and audit. And these capabilities help your teams track all those different changes. Excuse me. Between dev, test, prod. And it helps to align with any governance policies that you might have defined actually in ER Studio so that you ensure consistent and auditable. I'll get that word out. Environment. So yeah. So if you, yeah, excuse me. I got a frog. So yeah, if you're focusing on wanting to ensure that you can audit all those different changes and stuff, Aqua Data Studio can help you with that.
Now, regarding the poll, I forgot to hit the launch button. Many apologies. So I'll just hit launch. So which part of the Snowflake lifecycle do you spend most time on? And that's you personally, I guess. Another question that's come in, and this for both tools, what makes them suitable for hybrid or multi-cloud data ecosystems? I guess I'll answer this one first, and then Darren, you can chime in on ADS. So okay. ER Studio, I think for most warehousing projects, it's never going to just be about Snowflake. You're going to have many data sources. So in a lakehouse type environment, we might have your business systems providing data, structured data. We might also have the data lake with semi-structured data. So we need to be able to understand all of that. And again, that approach of physical models and logical models means that the logical model gives you a map of the information regardless of the technology. So we can really understand, sort of compare eggs with eggs or apples using these different models. And there's a tool sort of hides away the sort of the technicalities of the different platforms. So within one tool set, we can understand and then design data assets in exactly the same way. Darren, I guess the same question to you.
Yeah, it looks like we might have had a freeze in the webinar, but unsure if it's affecting everybody. So I'll go ahead and answer as well. So with regards to Aqua Data Studio in hybrid and cloud systems, so Aqua Data Studio currently connects to 40 different data sources. And that includes your typical relational databases, NoSQL databases, and cloud databases like Snowflake. And it can pull in upstream data as well. JSON, it's functional with MongoDB. You can generate synthetic test data across all these different environments, and it can help you with integrating any legacy environments you have on-prem maybe and into your Snowflake pipelines down the road. So it makes it ideal for complex enterprise data architectures.
Very good. Thanks, Darren. Okay, so back to our poll. Which part of the Snowflake lifecycle do you spend most time on? So for most of you, 46% said data architecture, modeling, and design documentation. So I guess that's going to be more around the studio side of things. 23% of you said query development and performance tuning. So that's very much Aqua Data Studio. And 31% of you said still exploring how to manage Snowflake effectively. So great. I think we're going to finish. Hopefully this was useful for you all. Now, if you've got any more questions, please contact us at sales.idera.com. We've got your details. We'll send you an email with a link to the recording. Based on the answers to some of your questions, we'll sort of talk to you more about one of the products or the other, but just let us know anything you need and we'll try and sort you out. But thank you very much for tuning in.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jamie.